of any.
Yes, but
then shut the up. It's just a matter of where the line is drawn.
You invoke
your condescension, bro.
You invoke the Civil
condescension.
War. Hey, buddy.
Did I just hear you say I'm like way far behind, but that I am too online, that I'm one of the two online crowd? Can you unpack that for me? I'm just going to listen.
No, but hang on. I'm going off of what Pisco said, okay? Pisco said something about you maybe saying that we should ignore the courts.
Oh, I've talked in the past about... This is a debate that I've had for years. I'm not entirely sure.
To talk about the general fight for democracy. I can't fight on Hutch's behalf. I mean, you can call it any time. You're fine.
I think the president of the United States, no matter who it is obligated to always obey the Supreme Court, because it's a notion called nonacquiescence, and it really has its genesis for all intents and purposes during the Civil War, because President Lincoln disregarded a court order by Chief Justice Taney about habeas corpus. And his logic was at the time, like, if I obey this order, it's basically going to jeopardize the war effort. Do I have to forego my duty to, take care that all the other laws be faithful for the sake of this one? And so it's something that's been debated by judicial scholars for centuries. It's something I absolutely think about, because the entailment there is that the Supreme Court is the boss of Congress and the president, and it's actually intended to be the weakest of the three branches, weaker than the president, certainly weaker than Congress. So this is something that
can you give me a real world application? Give me a hypothetical where you think it might be appropriate, like a realistic kind of real world application. In the modern context.
That I probably couldn't give you one offhand. I don't think I've ever called for non-acquiescence in like the modern time. I can't think of it as like a single example, but it's a philosophical notion that there are Supreme Court orders that in theory, I think the president should just ignore. Well, like, again, like Civil War and things of that nature.
Well, I mean, tell me how it came up in the context of you talking about it recently.
There is one modern example. Well, no, because Pisco and I talk about this shit all the time, because we talk about balance of power, separation of powers, which branch is supposed to be dominant over the others. These are like common conversations that we've had, just like structural conversations about the system of government. But there's one example actually I can think of where I flirted with non-acquiescence, and that was during the Biden administration about the debt ceiling. Okay, so I can't remember all the details at the time. So it was like 2022, 2023, when we needed to lift the debt ceiling, and there was a potential government shutdown because the Republicans weren't going to, necessarily give the votes. And there was a lot of debate about whether or not Biden should mint $1 trillion coin or something like that in order to knock off enough debt so that we have some room before we hit the debt ceiling. And there was a debate about whether or not the Supreme Court would force President Biden to default on our debt. If you can't come to an agreement to satisfy the statutory obligations to raise or suspend the debt ceiling, if the Supreme Court said, we got to default on our debt because the president is still spending money that he's not congressionally authorized to use, maybe the president should just ignore them and continue to do that. You're going to have to try to order me to default on the national debt and trigger a global economic catastrophe. And Lawrence Tribe, Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe, one of the most reputable in the business, also made the case that the president might just want to ignore what the Supreme Court says.
Listen, you're my boy, and I love you.
Oh, no.
Just want you to know that.
Oh, no.
Appreciate that, buddy.
It's over.
That's really online, buddy. That's really online. That's really super online.
Wait, you asked me for an example. What the hell does that mean?
You're talking about ignoring the Supreme Court. Just
Ad-hom attack? His phrase turned on his head? Well, it was coming, okay?
Jessiah, this is a really online, not serious thing. Okay, like if you start advocating for why would it stop there? At that point, if you just ignore the court that blatantly, that kind of way, why would you stop there? And at that point,
Hutch,
you are speaking.
Hutch, are you telling me there are no circumstances, under no circumstances, can the president of the United States or Congress disregard the Supreme Court? You can't think of any.
But
then shut the fuck up. It's just a matter of where the line is drawn. Fuck your condescension, bro.
Bro, you invoked the Civil
condescension.
War
asked me
during Biden.
You asked me for a specific example outside of Civil War.
Jessiah,
and I answered that there was one that I was flirting with.
Jessiah.
And by the way, it's not just me, asshole. Highly educated judicial scholars
Yes, I do. I do feel bad. Okay, but I got too annoyed.
Under
Okay?
no circumstances can the president of the United States or Congress disregard the Supreme Court. You can't think of any.
Yes, but
then shut the fuck up. It's just a matter of where the line is drawn. So fuck your condescension, bro.
Bro, you invoked the Civil War.
Condescension.
Jessiah, you invoked the Civil War.
Fuck it. You're right. So there's a line, Hutch.
Yes.
So again, fuck your holier than thou shit.
No,
fuck it.
Jessiah,
You asked me for a specific example where
were we in a civil war during Biden?
You asked me for a specific example outside of Civil War.
Jessiah,
and I answered that there was one that I was flirting with.
Jessiah.
And by the way, it's not just.
He seems okay. Probably got something interesting to say. He just needs to type it up somewhere. Okay, here's my guess on what he was trying to say. Okay, he was talking about how Bibi basically tried to make a grab for power, and then the people of Israel stopped it. Basically, like people were burning in the streets, and people were up in arms about Bibi and shit like that. And then basically, I guess ultimately what he was trying to get at was like, oh yeah, Trump is going to have a much harder time than he thinks, right, in order to get power, because, you know, maybe it isn't as doomer as you think it is, because people are going to go like ape shit or some shit. I don't know, like if that was the point, yeah, whatever. But I ultimately think I'm misinterpreting, but yeah.
Just me, asshole. Highly educated
There's a lot of
judicial
not serious
scholars.
People. I understand. There's a lot of
Lawrence Tribe, famous and not serious person.
It's not serious. You're not thinking about it. Like you invoked the last time that happened.
Oh my.
Okay, yeah. Now that Josiah's pointing it out, it kind of makes sense, because the way that Hutch talks is very condescending. I will say that. Okay, he's not as condescending as Pisco. Pisco is like the most condescending. Okay, but like he is definitely super condescending. I'll say that much. Okay, I'll say that much. I'll give the Pisco side this. Okay, that I do actually think Hutch is very condescending. Yeah. Like I don't know if he intends to do this or whatever, but the way that he says this is definitely holier than thou. Holier than thou, not really taking anybody else seriously, way too confident in the things that he's saying, treating everybody else as wrong. And when everybody around him tells him that he is wrong, he is stubborn, he'll double down, and he'll die on that hill, it seems. But yeah,
oh my God.
You gotta let me talk, bro. I let you talk. I
answered your fucking question, and you're spending all this time condescending me.
You're cutting me off.
I answered you in good faith. I don't give a fuck if you don't think. I don't give a fuck if you don't think that it's a serious example.
Relax. Calm
in
down.
good
Calm
faith.
Down. I'm playing with you. It's banter. It's banter. Chill.
It's not. No, it's not banter.
It's not banter. It's not banter. It really isn't banter. Okay, that's just gaslighting, isn't it? That's just a little bit of gaslighting. We do a little gaslighting.
But you're saying
I know you well enough to. I know you well enough.
I think Pisco might be rubbing off a little bit on Hutch here. Jesus.
To know when you're being serious, and you just admitted I'm being half serious.
Let me respond to it then. Wait a minute. Hold on. You're being belligerent right now. You're being belligerent right now.
If you're just going to condescend me, no, thank you.
What? Are you pulling out of the conversation then? I won't condescend you. I will be so nice and civil.
Oh.
Then proceed.
Okay. You brought up the last time that this happened, non-acquiescence.
He talks like
in
this.
The context of a civil war. Obviously, that is a totally different calculation. If we are at the point where we're in a civil war, then, dude, so many bets, like all bets are off. Like, you know, you try to preserve the system as much as you can, and you at the same time, you're in a war with people that want to take it over and maybe do like a fascist takeover and do like a coup or whatever and like basically destroy the system. At that point, you have to make all kinds of compromises. I mean, I'm like, of course, like there were illiberal things that happened when we were fighting the Civil War, but we're not there right now. We are like 20 steps removed from that. And I just want to ask you if you think that it's a realistic solution to just start ignoring the Supreme Court. And I'm just asking you, like, do you not think at that point?
How many steps are we removed from a civil war? My question, I guess my question to Hutch is, how many steps do you think are we removed from a civil war, right? You say 20 steps. I say 1 step. You say 20 steps. I say 1 step. Do you know what that 1 step is? Take a guess. Take a guess. That 1 step is Trump doing a military coup. That 1 step is Trump basically going ahead and getting the loyal generals on his side, the people who are loyal to him, to essentially force a third term, basically a forever term, to establish himself as the dictator with nobody to push back against him. And he has already set all the pieces into place. I'll tell you which pieces. Pete Hegseth, gathering all the generals and commanders together for a loyalty test. Trump getting rid of any generals and slandering any generals that are against him. Okay? Trump testing the waters and the boundaries of the Constitution and breaking it outright. Breaking the Supreme Court orders, okay? Breaking the Supreme Court order on a 9-0 decision. All right? That's it. He already completed steps 1 to 19. Trump has already committed steps 1 to 19. We are one step away, okay? We're not... I don't want to hear this shit. I don't want to hear this shit about, oh, well, we're so many steps away, blah, 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 blah. No, we're one step away. One, all right? Because otherwise, my question to Hutch is, what are the 20 steps? What are the 20 steps? What's the 20 steps? You said 20 steps. What are the 20 steps?
That the right wing in this country are gonna take up arms and it's just on like Donkey Kong at that point, right?
That is a possibility.
That's what don't you want to avoid that? Don't you want to avoid that, bro?
Do you remember how this topic just came up?
You asked me about me saying that you were too online.
Right. So I asked you a question, a very specific question. You said, well, it's based off something I heard from Pisco about the Supreme Court. And I said, well, there is this notion called non-acquiescence, and it's happened in the past. It's just very, very rare, and it's something that's being discussed and has been discussed for centuries by judicial scholars. And I gave you a specific example. Then you wanted to focus on non-acquiescence, and you said, well, why would you be talking about that with Pisco? Well, again, Pisco and I have conversations, like broad, abstract conversations about separation of powers and checks and balances all the time.
Right.
And then when you asked me for what non-Civil War example could I possibly conceive of where non-acquiescence might be permissible, I said, I remembered the one about the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
Because if we defaulted on our debt, it would trigger a domestic and global economic catastrophe that would probably make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park, which is why at the time there were judicial scholars like Lawrence Tribe and others suggesting that maybe if the president forces the issue to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court says you need to default on the debt because you didn't statutorily meet the terms of raising or suspending the debt ceiling, that the president, for the sake of the domestic and global economy, should just give the court the finger and keep spending money to pay off the debt. That I said that was an example where, of course, I considered it. And you responded with the most unhinged, condescending rant. How dare you even think in such a scenario about violating or disregarding the Supreme Court? And if we did it, wouldn't the right, raise up in rebellion? I'm not suggesting that that is something that any president, Democrat or Republican, invoke on the regular, but I can imagine some extraordinary crisis like either a civil war or a domestic or global economic catastrophe where the court could probably be ignored for the greater good. Now, having reiterated that all again, do you really think that responding the way you did was appropriate?
Listen, the context. Listen, what you're saying right now is reasonable to me. Okay, if you're helping,
well, then then deal with that.
Jessiah, let me talk. Okay, the context of all of this was I was in a debate last night with Rashad, and Pisco started to do the thing that he does with me, where he tries.
Oh, come on. Pisco barely wasn't doing anything that Live and Learn. That was the tamest I've ever seen Pisco. That was the tamest I've ever seen Pisco, okay? And the reason why he was so tame was because of the fucking piling that Destiny and Hutch has done on him the night before that, all right? That has to be the most tame Pisco presentation I've ever seen. Now who's being bad faith?
To trap me in hypocrisy or something like that. He brought you into this, and he said, Josiah's been talking about, like, ignoring the court. That's what he said to me. So that was my impression, right? That's what I'm thinking, right? And so you come in and then you talk about the Civil War, and then you mention this other thing. I'm still in my head thinking, like, this is not the only application that it's come up. I mean, are there other times where you've suggested that possibly Biden should have ignored the Supreme Court, or or the next Democratic president should possibly ignore the Supreme Court. Was that the only time it came up?
I can't think of any other example where I told Pisco, like a specific example where the court should be ignored.
Okay, then I had the wrong impression then, bro.
But here's the frustration. I gave you all that information before you responded the way you did. And this is actually part of the problem, right? Which is going back to my initial question about where you said where I'm too online. And I've said this to you before. And wait a minute, I've said this to you before, and I've said this to you in multiple conversations before, including the one earlier today, where you and I can just exchange straw men about one another if you want.
I'm glad you clarified.
Okay.
Listen, I'm glad you clarified.
I appreciate that.
I'm giving you like insight into
This pisses me off now. What you're saying is reasonable. No, Hutch, Jessiah literally said the same thing twice to you. On the first time you lost and backed off because you got called out, you backed off. Wait, what? Called out on what specifically? Like the 2 online thing?
why I was thinking this. The reason I said anything online, I was responding to Pisco said, you are quote, and I think I quote here, he said, Jessiah is starting to talk about like possibly ignoring the Supreme Court. So that's what I'm working off of, bro. That's what's in my head. And so in that context, I hear that and I'm like, that's way too online if we're just casually talking about ignoring the Supreme Court. If you're
Why is that online? Why is that online? Why is that online? Because Trump literally did that IRL. Why is that online when Trump did that IRL? We're not talking about the online territory. This is not an online speculation, leftist stereotype shit, right? Trump literally did this IRL. It happened. IRL. What? Is he high?
Where it's, like the global meltdown of the entire like interconnected economy. If it's like avoiding that, then it's the same like fucking trolley problem, harm reduction principle. I would totally be willing to entertain. But again, my impression of where you were at and you being too online. Wait, can you acknowledge that though? If I'm told,
no, I can't. No, respectfully, I can't. I understand you having that impression going in, but then when you asked the question the first time and I answered it, then whatever misapprehension you were under or implication you got from Pisco should have went out the fucking window.
No, come on, bro.
Yes, because Pisco didn't give you specific examples.
I just claim only makes sense if he wasn't listening to what Jessiah was saying before he got called out.
Examples. Now, if you'll allow me to talk about the context that Pisco and I have talked about this in. So one of the issues that I wrestle with all the time in my version of the Supreme Court or my assessment of the Supreme Court is the fact that we don't have 3 co-equal branches. We have 3 coordinate branches. And the founders were very, very clear that the Supreme Court was intended to be the weakest of the branches, weaker than the president.
That's true. So basically, I think the judicial is the weakest, and then Congress is in the no. Executive was the middle, right? And then Congress was the top. Yeah.
President, and Congress was supposed to be stronger than both. It's supposed to be Congress.
Yep.
Then the president, then the Supreme Court. And one of the things that I wrestle with all the time is in practice, it's actually the Supreme Court on top, because the Supreme Court can effectively issue commands to the other 2 branches. And the expectation since Marbury versus Madison, and particularly since the Civil War, has been if the Supreme Court issues an order, the other 2 branches are obligated to obey. So the Supreme Court can strike down federal statute and can also strike down executive orders. Well, what options do the other 2 branches have? Well, Congress really can't do anything, right? If Congress passes a law.
I thought the judicial branch was reactive. Yeah, it's reactive to things, but then inside of a result of a Supreme Court decision, that can be proactive, right? A Supreme Court decision can be proactive if within the ruling it presents an opportunity for the Supreme Court to declare things.
And it's signed into law by the president. So you have 2 branches versus 1. The Supreme Court reviews that law passed by Congress, signed by the president, and says, oh, it's unconstitutional, we're striking it down. The only way to get around that at that point, other than getting the court to change its mind or packing the court or something, is to do a constitutional amendment. And we've had 27 constitutional amendments in 250 years out of literally more than 10,000 attempts. We have the hardest constitution to amend in the world. And the president by himself is effectively totally powerless against the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can tell the president no. And then under our current system, the president is obligated to obey. So as I've talked with Pisco multiple times, how is that, if anything, other than a total inversion of what the founders intended? If I can tell you no and you're obligated to obey, and we're not equals, I'm your boss. So we've had that conversation, but I've never, that I can think of, ever advocated, other than the debt ceiling situation, for a president to just simply disregard the Supreme Court. But philosophically, and in terms of checks and balances and separation of powers, yes, I think it's a really good fucking question, because the Supreme Court is ultimately, in our current system, the most powerful branch.
But you know, so hang on. I just want to hold on. I'm pulling up the transcript from the podcast last night. I just want to get exactly what was said, okay? Because if memory serves correctly, where is it?
I'm just panicking.
Do a Control F search for Jessiah and it's not popping up. I don't know the exact timestamp.
Yeah, I remember what he said. I understand. So I think Pisco was a bit overstating my position.
All right.
But we have talked about the notion of non-acquiescence. And as far as the specifics, again, the only one I can think of ever publicly flirting with is the debt ceiling example. But again, Hutch, I love you. You're a friend. And that's part of the reason why I was like, I'm not playing. You really pissed me off. And the reason you really pissed me off is I understand if you had a certain conception of me based on what Pisco said. But as soon as you asked the question, and I'm like, well, I can't think of a single example. And then I'm like, okay, well, here's this one specific modern example. And for you to react the way that you did, it was incredibly disrespectful and condescending, especially for a guy who doesn't like you. You say all the time, you've said it in conversations with me, about how you feel that, you're being strawmanned or misrepresented. You ask people to, give the steel man of your impression. I feel you do that to me. And so that's why I came in here actually just asked the question.
But you're steamrolling right now. Let me just say real quick.
Go ahead.
I had a totally different.
Yeah, but Hutch yaps for way too long. He doesn't even give concise answers. He's just fucking he monologues like some Shakespeare character. I mean, the other branches can just not enforce the judicial branch's decisions. I guess that's not how it works out, though. No, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, but they would all have to agree on the Supreme Court not just taking the power away from the. I mean, technically you can say that any faction of the government adheres to that, right? Literally any faction of the government, if nobody enforces them, then they're powerless. But we have to the way that we do it is that they all have power, right? Like what use is the president if the generals and everybody refuses to carry out the orders? Well, then nothing, right? Nobody what's the usage if nobody wants to carry out executive orders? Same thing. What use is Congress if people pretend as if the legislation wasn't passed?
An impression, and it was not my intention to strawman you, and it does look like I was mischaracterizing your perspective, and I wasn't doing that intentionally. I was working off of, in my head, again, I'm being told that the impression is that you're starting to talk about non-acquiescence in a more general sense. Okay, so that's where my head is at. And when you gave me your one specific answer, that doesn't nullify.
I like Jessiah, but I had to unsub his weekly Saturday Bill Maher Glaze video was making me angry. Why? I know nothing about Bill, so yeah.
What I heard, that wasn't you saying this is the only time I would ever entertain that. I'm still in my head going off of what Pisco told me, which is that he's starting to talk about doing that. Okay, so if for misrepresenting anything you said, I apologize. I really do. I
appreciate that.
I don't
Next time you could just ask. Besides the debt ceiling crisis, Jessiah, since I was given to believe that this is something you really want to do.
It was a throwaway line.
The condescension. Bill Maher constantly complains about wokeism like it's the most critical issue. Oh, okay. Yikes.
I have strong disagreements with Steven right now, and I said the same thing about him, but it's not. It is.
Yeah, because you suck ass.
It's kind of like half banter, okay?
Jess is mad. Yeah, Jess is actually mad. Yes, Jess is mad. He's mad.
But
He's angry.
I was not working off of it sounds like the reality of the situation. If you're saying that the whole non-acquiescence thing came up in the context of this particular thing, and the greater harm in this case could be like a global catastrophic meltdown, then sure, I would entertain that, and I would say that you're not too online. Okay, I did not have the correct impression of your attitude with respect to non-acquiescence, and I agree with you on like 99% of your prescription.
I'm surprised how poorly Hutch is handling making a friend mad. I mean, he's also pretty bad at communicating to Pisco. He has an issue. To be very frank, okay? I'm sorry, but this seems to be a recurring issue that like Hutch is not that good at communicating
when it comes to the courts.
Right. And so again, the only other time this has come up is just broad structural philosophical notions like are the other two branches obligated to obey the Supreme Court? And if so, doesn't that necessitate that the Supreme Court be the most powerful branch if they can tell the other two branches what to do, but neither of the other two branches can tell it what to do? Seems to be a vertical relationship and not a coordinated one.
I agree with the binding code of ethics. I agree with the binding code of ethics. I agree with term limits. I would be open to packing the courts. Like, you know this about me, okay?
I know, and that's not. I'm not talking about that. I'm trying to give you the context of when non-acquiescence has come up in conversations with Pisco. And the only specific example are the Civil War example with President Lincoln and Chief Justice Taney, and the debt ceiling crisis under Biden. Okay. Now, that aside, as far as the two online part, because I remember you saying this, it wasn't even just about the Supreme Court, but again, about the strength of Trump. So that's actually, it wasn't even about the court why I came in here. I came to ask you why you think I'm too online when it comes to Trump. And I'm curious if you could clarify a bit more. I'm trying to figure out where we're missing each other. And you touched on it a bit earlier.
What part of it is online? Trump literally did it IRL. That is literally the definition of not online.
But I had to go and record some video. So now that I have time, can you talk about it a bit more?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to reiterate again that
what is too online is anything I disagree with. Anytime I disagree with something, that automatically makes it too online. Anything is too online when I just disagree with it, okay? Every single time I disagree with something, that makes it too online, okay? It's automatically online if it's something I disagree with.
Apologize for disrespecting you in that way. And
we're good. I appreciate it.
Mischaracterizing, okay? I genuinely apologize for that. So I will for sure remember this conversation and make more of an effort to be respectful of you overall in my rhetoric, okay? Well, a lot of it is kind of like half friendly banter, but touching on some very real frustrations. But if I ever cross any kind of line like that, I do apologize. I do consider you like a friend. I respect you. I respect your work ethic. I like the relationship that we have offline, and I want to protect that friendship. So truly, I apologize.
No, likewise.
Okay.
I'm in the same boat. So go ahead.
Okay. So in the context of what you're touching on, I think there's a big problem with not just the populist left or the typical lefties that I have a problem with. I think there's a bigger problem going on in terms of the way that people talk about Donald Trump. I think he is mischaracterized. I think people talk about Donald Trump in a way to suggest that he is much stronger than in reality he actually is.
It's like fuck like monkeys later. What is wrong with you? Why did I have to read that?
Donald Trump in this way.
I didn't need to read that.
As having more power and having more influence and having more effectiveness as a leader than he actually.
I just can't communicate his point. Stuck just being the norms. Yeah, but he's very afraid. No, sorry. He's very proud of that label, though. Like I just don't like how proud he is of that label. Like he's just so. There are flaws with that label. That label is not like a good thing. Like stop like fucking wearing it on your head like you're the norms liberal. Yeah, the norms liberal fucking suck sometimes, okay? And you need to understand that.
Actually does. That we are actually playing into
the
his
norms
propaganda.
liberal. Oh my god.
His whole thing is, I'm so strong. I actually won California. It was just the illegal immigrants, and that's the only reason. And I probably won Maine, and it was all the voter fraud, and everybody.
I won Minnesota three times.
Everybody respects me now. Like it's just, I feel like we're like so many people are adopting that framework and ignoring the fact that while his individual threats to the liberal order are real and alarming, and we should be vigilant about that, him and his overall political movement have been remarkably weak for the entirety of his time as president. I don't know if you watched the conversation that Brian Tyler Cohen had with Barack Obama, but he gets into a lot of the structural imbalances, and he talked about the asymmetry between the parties right now. We talk a lot about the asymmetry in terms of media coverage. He talked about the structural asymmetry, and he also talked about our aspirational asymmetry. And I know we've talked about this a lot. He was talking
Hutch is a scared son. Dude, I need to know why. Like Hutch seems to go full aggro when it's against the lefties, but otherwise he's just scared of everything. How does he live? How does he counter this contradiction in his mind?
Talking about the fact that the things that Democrats want to do, like we want big healthcare reforms. We want, constitutional amendment to get rid of.
How does he square that
Citizens
circle?
United. We want to like codify, protections for queer people and, codify protections for
what'd
women
you say?
to have
That's a bad
abortions
word.
and these kinds of things. These are things that require consensus. And more importantly, these are things that require 60 fucking votes in the Senate. The things that the Republicans want to do are things that they can largely do with executive power. I mean, and then you have tax cuts through budget reconciliation. Okay.
Brennan Buckingham did a hit piece on Perry. Have you seen it? No. Perry is a nobody. That's like making a hit piece video on me. Who am I? I'm nobody. Like I don't know. Like these random fucking a lot of these random anti-fans are just not worth the time. The video has 300K now. What? Can you show me?
Boom. You just like knocked out like 50% of what you promised. And it just doesn't require
I didn't watch this one, but I think Crenshaw agreed with Hassan.
the same amount of consensus, the same amount of like making that
Yeah, that's
sausage
why I
and
said
doing
for
the work.
years, just for the to piggyback off that. That's why I've said for years to like Wick and others when they say
Who's
the
Brandon
Republicans have
Buckingham
a
anyway?
principled commitment to the filibuster. It's like no, not really. They recognize the filibuster is more useful to them in place because it blocks the bulk of an ambitious Democratic agenda, whereas most of what they want to do, to your point, are tax cuts and judicial appointments, which you can use either reconciliation.
Static mail on the internet.
While I was in the hospital on the brink of death, a tornado of retardation was brewing. The internet's attention economy has spawned humanoid cockroaches that will say anything for a few moments of online notoriety. Well, let me introduce you to the most pathetic man on the internet. His name is Purple Perry Gaming.
Oh no! Okay, well, we can save that for tomorrow, okay?
Or with a simple majority vote.
Yes. So we talked about this. So like the conversation with Rashad last night, it is touching on.
Who's that? I don't fucking know, but it seems funny.
Here. Because if it was
Purple Perry Gaming is a Jesse anti-fan.
correct, if it was true that Donald Trump has basically already ended our
He's an op that hates me. He's one of the Foodshops haters. Okay?
liberal democracy, that the
Foodshop haters
guardrails
spawn.
are not there, that he's not constrained by the system. Say, for example, if we get to the midterms and he sees his voters
By tomorrow, you mean 20 minutes from now? Dude, no, because one of my coverages is typically longer than
voter machines,
that.
right? Like at that point, it is on like Donkey Kong, and we're doing a civil war. That's what it's going to look like. I mean, just like similarly, I said that they wouldn't take it lying down if you started to ignore the Supreme Court or do what Rashad suggested.
It's interesting how many rape analogies make it to the formal commentary space. Take it lying down. What else could that mean but rape?
To just like, arrest judges or whatever.
It's just kind of interesting.
Same thing is
When you
like,
notice
on our
it,
side,
you'll notice
we're not
it.
going to take that lying down either. I mean, like that is going to be a civil war at that point, right? My whole thing is like, we are not there yet. And so the solution.
Rachel downplays how much he's a fan of Hassan. Unsubbed early last year when he mentioned him being a positive voice. Oh, that's not good. Did he actually say that? Not good. I don't like that. It can mean anything. You just have a dirty mind. Okay, if I said your mom took it while lying down, what does that mean? Waiting. Yeah, that's right.
That he was suggesting last night would be necessary if the system had already fell, but that's not what's happening here. And the reality is that Donald Trump has been a spectacular failure. He has been an incredibly weak president. He has never been in a weaker position than he is right now. So why are we doing this thing where it's like we need to start getting creative and we need to start like thinking about maybe.
Okay, it can mean you're not acting against any offense. Okay, if I said your mom is taking it lying down, you're telling me that it is not acting against any offense. And this is why conservatives are laughing at us.
Like
okay?
working outside of the liberal rule set. Me and IRI were pushing back like, what are we talking about? Fucking Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill won by 15 points. Just do what they did. Mamdani, came out of nowhere and not only won the mayorship, but now has like elevated his national profile to the point where I can see him being governor one day or senator one day,
Why are you adding non-existent context? Okay. If I described your mom lying down, legs spread wide, okay, and I was unzipping my pants, and I said, I'm about to take you lying down, okay? What does that mean? Okay, stop.
Like just go, like do what they did, like borrow from their campaigns and focus on affordability and focus on Trump's corruption and focus on bringing prices down and these kinds of things. Why are we talking about like we need to be prepared to, you know, throw Rupert Murdoch in prison and then, you know, dissolve the courts if they have a problem with that? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So again, I'm not proposing dissolving the courts. I definitely want to pack the fuck out of it, and with all the binding codes of conduct that we talked about. So certainly I want to do things that are constitutionally permitted to change the composition and disposition of this court for, you know, a more pro-democracy and quite frankly pro-democrat posture, right? So I'm unambiguous about that. But and even as far as like the Rupert Murdoch thing, it is interesting as far as Fox News is concerned because, you know, the Biden era FCC actually tabled certain investigations and probes into Fox News precisely because they had a very laissez-faire pro-First Amendment posture towards speech. And so they would table certain probes into like NBC and CBS, but also Fox News. They were fairly even-handed in that respect. Now we have a very different FCC under Brendan Carr who will resurrect probes and complaints against CBS and NBC and, you know, networks that Trump hates, but he'll keep the Fox ones buried, right? So they've certainly weaponized the FCC, and I've said this in multiple videos I've done. You know, I'm not familiar enough with the law, and Pisco seemed skeptical that there was a colorable case to be made against Fox News, but I've heard other people say differently. But just you can imagine that right after they paid the biggest defamation settlement in American history, $787 million, you could conceive of.
I hate Hutch doesn't get this. MAGA doesn't care about political victories like moral majority. Their goal is cultural victories that shift the Overton window that requires counter-culture actions. Yeah.
Of a Biden administration, even if it didn't come from President Biden himself, but whoever his FCC chair was at the time, you know, saying, you know what, they just paid the biggest defamation settlement in American history, signal boosting Trump's defamatory lies about the 2020 election. And that's not just like, it's not just like even run of the mill defamation. Like that does go to the heart of American democracy. So we're going to use our FCC powers to launch certain probes and inquiries and investigations, stuff like that. I think you could make a colorable case for the FCC to have
make it lying down. Okay, well, I'm letting you know the way I interpret it is very sexually, okay, and it's very hot and sweaty.
Fox News.
But you'd be looking.
You're welcome.
But in that case, Josiah, you would be looking for something to investigate instead of something landing. Instead of something landing on your desk and then investigating it, you would be, you know, starting an investigation in search of a crime, right?
Well, no. I what I'm saying is, again, I'm not familiar with the law there, and maybe there's absolutely no colorable case to be made. But I can imagine a timeline in the multiverse, given that was, you know, public news at the time. It's not like you had to go searching for it, right? It was a high profile story about that defamation settlement, that the FCC would be aware of that. And I mean, given the standards and practices and how they're supposed to regulate the conduct of, you know, people of agencies and networks under the FCC's remit, I could see a case. What I'm saying is I would not immediately dismiss a case brought by the Biden FCC against Fox News following the Dominion lawsuit. I could easily conceive in the abstract. But maybe an FCC chair would be like, hey, Josiah, I know that sounds like there's a relationship here, but in fact, no, there's nothing that Fox did under in the Dominion case that comes even close to an FCC violation. Then in that case, I'm not proposing that the FCC should go digging around for a separate issue after Dominion to punish Fox for Dominion. Does that make sense? I could see that the Dominion facts could potentially violate FCC guidance and FCC rules. But it never happened because, you know, the Biden FCC didn't want to touch Fox with a 10-foot pole. Like they actively dismissed probes against various networks, including.
But they still had the blame levied onto them, right? I'm pretty sure Biden's still blamed for the COVID shit. I don't fucking know. Like it's like he's still blamed for weaponizing offices in order to like break the First Amendment or some shit. Like I remember when Biden was blamed for the COVID misinformation shit, like anti-misinformation shit on YouTube and shit like that. I don't know. Like he seems to be blamed for everything anyway.
Fox, because they had a very laissez-faire free.
You might as well just weaponize it, to be honest. Like if they're going to be blaming you for it and you're not going to win the narrative war, you might as well just like play the villain they want you to be, right?
Speech posture.
I think this example gets at the core of the conflicts that you and I have had in the past, the arguments that you and I have had in the past, which is that you are more comfortable with illiberal tactics. I mean, what you're describing, you're trying to dress it up and find some kind of like a legal rationale for it. But, you know, you are talking about launching an investigation in search of a crime. You are talking about politicizing the FCC. And before you say it, like, I understand like that's happening right now, but I want to make a different argument against it besides it being illiberal, because, you know, I think the merits of that argument are good. You should just not.
Yeah, you should probably stop using that term.
Generally do.
Can you clarify something?
On the more accurate blood pressure test, take a line out. I thought the best way to measure blood pressure is to like sit upright and have your arm at chest level.
Thing for me though, because you said that I would be weaponizing the FCC. Can you make how so?
Because Jessiah,
This is the other part of this cultural shift. MAGA has made it normal to do something as stupid as to blame a president for something they didn't do and needed time travel to accomplish. Yeah.
Or not describing, you're not citing any statute that you think they violated. You're just assuming that they did something wrong, and therefore you're going to open the books and look into them. But what is that based on?
Well, wait a minute.
That's based on what they did to Hunter Biden, right? They simply just looked into Hunter Biden. They assumed that he was incorrect, that he was wrong, and they opened an investigation. Isn't this literally what they did with Hillary Clinton as well? Do you have to wait for something to happen in order to launch an investigation? Or do you think you should launch investigations into shit automatically and see what gets turned up, right? How the fuck are you gonna find anything illegal or bad if you don't open any investigations? It's such a silly thing to run down.
Didn't call for them to open the books on Fox for the Dominion case. What I'm saying is, and I conceded this off the bat, that there may be no statute, which case I said repeatedly, and I'll say it again, if there was no violation of FCC rules by the Dominion conduct, then they shouldn't do anything. I'm saying, based on what we have seen from the Trump FCC about these like technical violations, like how, you know, this network or that network may have technically violated FCC guidance and they're using it to as a pretext to go after Jimmy Kimmel. It's a fishing expedition.
Yes.
I'm saying if what Fox did with Dominion violated FCC guidance, then I do think it's fair game. Now,
well, of course.
No, there's something that's even more fair game, right? Hunter Biden being looked into despite just being the son of the president. He wasn't even holding office, right? Why the fuck was he looked into? Yeah. So only they're allowed to do witch hunts? That doesn't seem very fair.
If instead what they're doing is, we don't like what Fox did during Dominion and we can't get them on the facts of Dominion, so we need to go hunting for something else to hit them with to punish them for Dominion, I don't support that. That I agree would be an illiberal fishing expedition, but I do not agree that if, and that's the key word, if.
Yeah, but illiberal is such a poisoned word at this point, right? Oh, anything I disagree with, too online. Anything that you agree with, too illiberal. Wow, what a great way to have a productive conversation, guys. We're really making progress here.
If that during the course of the Dominion case, Fox breached FCC guidance or FCC standards and practices, whatever it is, that the FCC probing that, I don't concede at all that that's illiberal or weaponization of the FCC.
But again,
so agree or disagree.
But again, if that's the framing, then I don't disagree with that. Like, if
was Stephen the one that made everybody use the term illiberal? Was Stephen the one that did that? I feel like Stephen was the first one to use the word illiberal like this.
If we lived in one of the universes in the multiverse where because of this trial and because of information that came out during the trial or the trial that was eventually settled, the lawsuit with Dominion thing, like if we live in the infinite multiverse where the Biden FCC at the time became privy to information that implied some violation of a regulation or violation of the law or whatever, then obviously that would be justified. But what I would not co-sign is being like, you know, this case against Dominion sure does seem to show like some real fuckery from Fox News. Let's take a look at their books. You know,
but that's not what I'm advocating for.
But if you're looking for a crime, that would be illiberal. But I want to make a different argument. I think a lot of the dialogue these days is about tit for tat, and so it's like, well, Donald Trump is doing it to us, so like we have to let them know that, you know, we're going to fight back and whatever. And I'm not saying this is what you're saying. I think this is really kind of short-sighted and misguided and wrong, because when you look at what Donald Trump is doing right now with his FCC, they're losing that in the culture. They're losing that fight in the culture. They're losing that fight politically. They are paying a price for this overreach, for this corruption. Like, why do you think the Texas Senate is in play in 2026? Like, why do you think we are massacring this Republican Party right now? Like, all over the country, it's all death by 1,000 cuts. Like, the public has lost confidence in this administration. They view this administration as corrupt about the Epstein stuff. They see them trying to initiate a grand jury charges against Comey and Letitia James.
They're not losing because of overreach. They're losing because they are not successful. Exactly. Fascism requires constant success. Fascism can only ride on momentum. Yes, that's the distinction. Yeah. It isn't, okay. It isn't, they aren't popular because the reason why they aren't popular isn't because people don't like fascism and people don't like the way that Trump is running things. It's because they support the way that Trump is doing things, except that they're doing fascism too slow and too unsuccessful. Is because they're stupid as shit, right? You're not going to fix the spirit of the nation by winning the next election because people are still going to be pro-fascism. How are you going to convince people to not be pro-fascism?
And failing. They say, there was just announced that Janine Pirro today is abandoning her efforts to try to find
against
some
the
crime
seditious
for this.
six.
Right. So like all of that adds up. All of this, the public is like, not everybody is super engaged enough to know about all this stuff happening, but all of it is hurting this administration. It's not helping them. And so you can argue that there's short-term gain for them being politically corrupt and weaponizing their
Silly
agencies
Hutch.
to go after political enemies. And I can understand the impulse to like want justice for that, or want retribution, or want some kind of like balancing kind of action from Democrats. But I'm just cautioning people to pause for a minute and just like look at this administration and ask, like, where is it getting them? Like, are they actually benefiting from this stuff? I don't want to emulate that. Like, I don't want Gavin Newsom to be a year in his presidency in, we get to like 2030 and,
Oh my God, who's talking about the future too much too? Like talking about like fucking predicting too much into the future and not looking at the past too much. President Gavin Newsom. Are we already assuming that's going to happen, or did he even declare that he's running? Or oh, okay, so it's only valid when you look into the future, I guess.
He's tried and failed like 5 times to get his AG to go after this person or that person or this person or that person. That's why I think it's important to preserve the independent nature of the DOJ and our agencies. We should not weaponize and politicize our agencies.
Okay, so you're saying we should do it in the background, right? Do it so then people don't see it. You're not telling me to lie, okay? You're telling me to lie better, stupid. So basically, we should be discreet about it. Gotcha. We can do that.
It will not help us in the long run. It might give us short-term catharsis, but the tit for tat stuff, it's only going to hasten the demise of the Republicans, put us on a fast track to actual civil war, and it's going to hurt us politically. Donald Trump is about to start speaking in the... Oh, wait, no, he's not. Never mind. They're doing a sizzle.
I was about to say, I think he starts at 9:00 and yeah. Has he been invited into the chamber yet?
They're walking in slowly now, but like, do you understand my counter argument to the tit for tat thing? Like, do you understand like where I'm going for, like why I get...
We all understand. You've been saying this for like the last 50 months at this point. Okay. We all understand what you're talking about. You're just wrong.
Very kind of gun shy about, Gavin Newsom running on a platform of, I'm going to direct AG to investigate Donald Trump.
By the way, Hutch, repeating this for the 50th time will not convince us any more than the first time you tried, okay? Please find new arguments as well.
You don't think it's necessary. You think that there's a risk of greater retaliation, that it would, like a tit for tat would just lead to, a race to the bottom.
I think it will hurt. I think it will hurt us politically. It's not a question of if, it will hurt us politically if we do that.
Yeah, I'm not sold on that yet. I think it depends much on what the tit for tat would entail and what the campaign would look like. I agree with you that certain things like, the textbook example that, we used to talk about, if Joe Manchin doesn't agree to a certain thing, I'm going to have the DOJ investigate his daughter. Like, yeah, I think that would be just politically disastrous. But
tit for tat.
That's literally what happened with Hunter Biden, though. That's literally what happened with Hunter Biden, though. That's literally what happened with Hunter Biden, though. It's literally what happened. It happened to Hunter Biden. The thing happened. Thing happened with Hunter Biden. He got one after because he was the son. They were already doing it.
Within a liberal framework is good. Like tit for tat means redistricting in California and redistricting in Virginia. I think not.
And it does mean prosecuting lawless behavior and stuff like that. So yeah, and anti-corruption measures and things of that nature. So again, I think it depends on precisely what is being discussed. So I understand your concern, and I've always understood your concern, and I do agree that it's a huge risk at a minimum. I still broadly support tit for tat of a certain type because I do think it's necessary. I think that the right in this country operates to the degree of ruthlessness that it does.
What would be other examples of tit for tat that you want to see? And I'll probably agree with you on a lot of these, right?
Yeah. I mean, you gave the example.
I mean, we can all agree that we're no longer living in the Obama era, right? And I would argue that it's already been really bad during the Obama era because, like, they were literally, like, if Obama literally breathed wrong, if he even gave, like, a single, like, hood accent type shit, like, Fox News would be down his ass, like, the night of. All right. Did we forget about the tan suit shit? You think this shit began with Trump or did it end with Trump? Trump is the ultimate culmination of this brain rot. Okay.
Gerrymandering in the absence of a national gerrymandering ban. That's one example.
I think we should go beyond. We should go beyond tit for tat with the gerrymandering thing. Like, I think we should ruthlessly gerrymander and get like 10 extra seats if we can do that, because they had an opportunity to codify a ban on partisan gerrymandering. They didn't want to do that. They picked a fight, and so I think we have a moral obligation to like fight that fight as aggressively as possible.
It lost minds because he asked for Dijon mustard on a hot dog. Really? Oh my lord! I didn't even know that happened.
Well, we should go beyond.
That sounds familiar, though.
Respect, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's probably the only way to again like incentivize them.
Yep, Steven said the entire Republican movement have been building up to this in the last 30 years. Great. So you're telling me Steven stole another take of mine. Fantastic. Thank you.
Come to the table to back a national gerrymandering ban. Again, expanding the courts as an example. I do think, again, public, relentless investigations into not just Trump, but Trump's family, prime time.
You're not even 30 years old, bro. How many takes has he taken?
Televised, none of this behind the scenes.
It's been over a year and I'm still watching Baldwin with glasses at 3 a.m. Jesus, why did you misgender me like that?
Shit, I'm looking forward to that. And then, yeah, I do think prosecuting members of the Trump administration, once the Trump administration is over for corruption.
That shouldn't come from, I'm saying that should not come from a political party. That should come from prosecutors. That should come from the attorney general, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like I would argue that's a political process because you would either openly campaign on accountability or expressly campaign on appointing an attorney general who would pursue such an agenda. So you'd either, as we've talked about before, you would either be very open about it, very publicly,
I'm a cat.
Supporting prosecutions, or you would keep your mouth shut, but knowingly pick a person in a political process that you would expect would do the things that I'm talking about. So I do think it's that's why I said it just depends on how you package it, depends on how you go about it. I do think that sort of tit for tat is necessary. Let me put it like this. If Trump pardons everybody out the door, which I think that's extremely likely, I would be shocked if he didn't.
What the fuck?
Although, he didn't pardon himself on the way out the door in term one.
That's funny.
So he was surprisingly restrained. He pardoned like Manafort and a bunch of others.
He'll do it this time. He'll do it this time.
I imagine.
Why is he spinning?
Or much more
that's actually
supporting of a mass pardon. I think we'll be in deep shit if that's the case, because all that does is set the standard at that point, because you can't really do anything about a pardon. The only thing I can think of that you could do about a pardon are two options. You could maybe get a constitutional amendment, maybe, but for all the reasons I just explained, I think that would be a challenge because you would need super majorities in both chambers and then 3/4 of the states to ratify. And I'm not sure we could even get those margins to curb a corrupt pardon tool.
I mean, it might take 40 years, Jessiah. That's the point.
Yeah,
it might take 40 years. It might take 50.
Man, by that time, Hutch is already like 2 feet in the grave. Jesus.
50 years might take 100 years, right?
So there's that, and then maybe the only other thing you could do is, again, by packing the court with non-conservative justices, that, you know, if there's any sort of legal challenges to Trump pardoning himself or others, that they would invalidate the pardon. You know, that those are the only workarounds. Like that, the pardon is kind of a skeleton key, right, to, you know, lawlessness, and you combine that with presidential immunity.
Wait, what if the real theory is like once people go bald, they enter Twitch poll? What if that's the real, like, what if that's the truth? Is that once people go bald, they're like, you know what, I have no chance of succeeding IRL anymore. People just don't like me anymore. So then they just decide to enter Twitch poll. I think that's what's actually going on.
It's basically a get out of jail free card, right? And I think if he invokes that and there's no meaningful way to address it, like there's no punishment, there's no accountability for him or his family or the people he pardons in his administration on his way out the door. When I say that we're in deep shit, I think that at that point, the race to the bottom will continue to accelerate, because that sends a signal to other corrupt politicians.
Okay, so Jessiah is basically making the same argument I am, right? Like, basically, I'm saying that, yeah, if there's no no, Steven agrees with this too. No, yes, he agrees with this, but I'm pretty sure I also made the point where winning elections doesn't mean shit if you can't fix the soul of the nation, right? And this is part of it. And I'm keep saying this. I think that it's not possible to save the United States unless we fix the soul of the nation, right? Part of fixing the soul of the nation is rectifying and correcting the narrative on everything that has happened, which is something that Steven agrees with, the Nuremberg trial shit, right? There needs to be a correction of narratives. If there is not a correction of narratives, then we're fucked, okay? There has to be something out there that establishes this as the objective truth. Okay, and anybody who disagrees with the objective truth is wrong, okay? And they should be socially shamed, okay? I'm not asking for like concentration camps or anything, okay, or re-education camps. I'm saying that there should probably be a national narrative, okay? A national narrative that everybody can agree on, okay? If Dems can't go win back-to-back president election, then the soul is gone. I wouldn't say that, but that would be pretty bad. Yes, that would be really bad. Like, let me just say it's really bad. Like, that would be really bad if that does happen. Okay, but
particularly corrupt Republicans, that all they have to do between presidential immunity and pardons is just get to the damn office in the first place, and then for 4 to 8 years, man, they can go ham. They can have meme coins, shit coins, stable coins, you know, deals with other countries, and between presidential immunity and the pardon tool, they can get away with fucking murder, you know?
Well, okay, so what happens then? I mean, like, what are you proposing? Something if he pardons everybody, or what are you saying?
Short of that's what I'm saying. I don't know where we go from there, and that's increasingly likely, because again, if he pardons everybody, there's no way to criminally prosecute them for the behavior he pardoned them for.
That might happen.
And no, of course, yeah, Jesus, I think that's increasingly likely, and that's why I can't speak for Steven or Pisco or Rashad or other people, but I can tell you that is part of the reason why I'm so cynical, because I don't know how this country moves on from that, because it's not just that Trump would get away with murder. It's, again, what it incentivizes for future Republicans.
I mean,
bro, I think getting away with murder is better than getting away with January 6th. Murder, dude, 40% of everybody, like 40% of murders are unsolved, all right? But January 6th, that affects the very pillars of our democracy. There's going to be a lot more than a single murder. There's going to be a lot more than a single... Also, Trump did actually get away with murder, didn't he? Right? Didn't he?
I think, listen, we need to be comfortable not knowing what the future holds. We need to be comfortable knowing that there are potentially dark paths ahead. But I think it's really important that we stay in the present and make as good a decisions as we possibly can in the moment. And if we start making decisions that I consider to be bad, or I'm defining bad in this respect as illiberal, I think those are bad decisions. Those bad decisions will they will pile up, and they will continue to pile up, and eventually I think the whole house of cards comes crashing down. So like I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it is protecting us against my worst case scenario if we start to go down this like illiberal path. But I'm also saying that recognizing that there may come a day where, you know, all bets are off and it's on like Donkey Kong and we're doing a civil war. I mean, I would never tell you like, just accept the, like, you know, if we were really sliding towards a fascist takeover, if he seizes voter machines or if he, you know, tries to dissolve the Congress, it does a military coup, you know, that's a really tough situation. Do I immigrate? Do I Minecraft myself? Do I, you know, take out my Colt Anaconda 44 and like we're in a different kind of situation there. But I think at every step of the way,
I mean,
we need to stay present and make good decisions. And, you know, generally speaking, you know, Donald Trump has personally enriched himself, no doubt, through this insane government corruption, especially with like the meme coin and everything.
$1 to $5 billion in just 1 year.
In my mind, I am preparing myself for the possibility that he never faces accountability for that. He may die a rich man, having never seen the inside of a prison cell. That's possible.
I guess that's possible. I'm with you.
but I'm not comfortable with that reality. At least Hitler did actually die in a prison cell. The bunker was his prison. In the last days of the war, Hitler was trapped in that bunker. It's effectively a prison. At least Hitler died in prison, okay? What kind of prison is the White House? Damn, that's the most luxurious prison ever. Holy shit.
It's not just, it's
Pretty sure a fucking president built in like a fucking Coke button that would get someone to bring them Coke whenever they needed soda.
It's not just possible. I would say at this point, if you
fucked
held
up.
that anaconda to my temple and forced me
Anaconda
to bet,
don't-
I would bet that
my
unbalanced
anaconda
probability is
don't
likely to
want
happen.
none.
But the thing is, as bad as
fight
much as
marches
that
on.
would
Unless
sting,
you got buns, hun.
yeah, well, that's the thing. As much as that would sting on the merits of just Trump alone, I think that there's that second part which automatically entails, which is if Trump gets away with it, I think it automatically triggers the second thing, which is it then sends the most definitive signal out there to other corrupt grifters.
I get it. Yeah.
Either party.
Not
that,
ideal.
like basically, it is a necessary condition, I think, for the republic to be in any sort of healthy state for Trump and his family and his allies to face some level of accountability, not just losing elections, right? But after they leave office, some sort of accountability by way of the law. Otherwise, I think we are on the decline, and I don't see a way to correct that. I don't see a timeline where Trump gets away with it and the republic, the country gets better.
Well, listen, it's one day at a time, brother. Like
Oh, okay, I'm done. Cool, awesome. I'm good with this one.